Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be here today alongside our Minister of Education, Demetrios Nicolaides, as well as Patricia Bolger, Chair of the Calgary Board of Education, and Hélène Emmell, who is the President of Du Conseil Scolaire FrancoSud. Oui? Oui. As well as many other representatives from other school boards that Demetrios will introduce when he speaks. But we want to share some good news as we continue to work to create more spaces for Alberta students. As you may remember, last September, I announced our government's plan to complete construction on about 50,000 new student spaces over the next 3 years and complete and open more than 150,000 spaces in the 4 years after that. There is no question this was an ambitious plan. It was backed by significant funding, a generational investment of $8.6 billion to build more than 100 new and updated schools in growing communities across the province. And it was our promise to tackle an issue that is all too real for Alberta families, folks in growing communities who want to ensure their children have a place to learn and grow and thrive. Fast forward to last month, Minister Horner tabled Budget 2025, which transformed our ambitious plan into concrete and tangible next steps with the goal of getting shovels in the ground as soon as possible. The budget approved 41 school projects across Alberta, and it's a real pleasure now to announce that 18 of the new projects we're funding are in the Calgary area. This includes 13 new schools to be built right here in Calgary, along with new... Oh! Thank you. Along with new schools in the, got me distracted there. So new schools to support the rapidly growing student population in Airdrie and Chestermere as well. So Calgary will also see a school renovation and 2 Calgary public charter school projects, giving students more space, more choice in their education, and much needed relief to families who live in Alberta's fast-growing communities. Although the record number of people moving to Alberta is a testament to Alberta's advantage, it's a strong economy and our high quality of life, and it really is a good thing, but it's also a challenging thing. And today's announcement is about meeting that challenge by easing the pressure on our K-12 system, building more schools, and creating more space, and ensuring every student receives the quality education they deserve in a great school that will prepare them for the success in the future. This is a team effort, and our government continues to work with all partners, including municipalities, school boards, and industry, to make this a reality as quickly as we can. This is also just the beginning, with many more school projects on the horizon, and I look forward to getting more students into more schools more quickly. Now I would like to invite our Education Minister, Demetrios Nicolaides, to share more details.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Premier. Thank you for being here for this incredibly important day and exciting day for Calgary and community. I want to start as well by acknowledging several of the individuals that are here. But first and foremost, I do want to say thank you to Hélène Emmell and Council Scolaire FrancoSud and Principal Nicolas Emond and their staff for joining us here today and allowing us to be here to host this important announcement. I also want to thank our school board representatives, so many of them who are here, teachers who are joining us, and all of you, of course, joining online for your amazing work and the support of Alberta students. I also want to thank and acknowledge my colleague, Minister Yassin, Minister of Immigration and Multiculturalism, for attending today. Thank you so much, Minister Yassin, for being here as well. I want to acknowledge Patricia Bolger, Chair of the Calgary Board of Education, Shannon Cook, Board Chair with Calgary Catholic School Division, Fiona Gilbert, Board Chair, Rocky View Schools, representatives from Foundations for the Future, Charter Academy, Almadina Language Charter Academy, Marilyn Dennis, President of the Alberta School Boards Association, and others. I'm so delighted and so excited to share this amazing news for Calgary students and families. As the Premier mentioned, Alberta is growing, and it's growing fast. The number of our students in our schools is growing quickly, and we're acting quickly as well to accommodate this historic growth. I'm happy today to give more details about the new schools that will be opening soon in Calgary and surrounding communities. I am confident that these new schools will help ensure that Calgarians enjoy a better way of life. I first want to talk about some of the new schools in the Calgary area. In communities around Calgary, we will see 2 new schools. More specifically, a new elementary school has been approved for Airdrie in the fast-growing southeast community of Lanark, and a new high school is now approved for Chestermere in the Chelsea area. Now moving to Calgary itself, 16 new school projects are now moving forward. For Northeast Calgary, 6 schools are on the way. This is on top of the 3 that I announced just last month. The 6 new schools in Northeast Calgary include a new Catholic K-9 school in Cornerstone, 1 new elementary in Cornerstone, a new junior high school, also in Cornerstone, another junior high in Cityscape, and an expansion of Almadina Language Charter Academy, and a new elementary in Livingston. South Calgary will also be seeing some new schools, 4 in particular, including a new junior high in Aspen Woods, that's more West Calgary, but we'll call it South for now, a new junior high in Mahogany, a new Catholic junior high elementary in Walden, and more space in Quarry Park for the Foundations for the Future Charter Academy. And we've also approved now 5 new schools in Northwest Calgary. A K-4 school in Nolan Hill, a 5-9 school in Sherwood, a K-5 school in Sage Hill, and a 6-9 school in Kinkora, and finally a Catholic junior high elementary in Carrington. And last but not least, this very francophone school, École de la Rose Sauvage, will be receiving much needed modernization. I know this school has served students well for many years, but I'm happy to say it will be updated soon so students and teachers can enjoy it for many more years. As a government, we are fully committed to improving accessibility to Francophone education and ensuring Francophone students have the resources, spaces, and opportunities they need to succeed. With these 18 school projects now moving forward, there are now 49 projects underway in the Calgary area. These new schools will go a long way to make life better for Calgarians. Parents and students will have their commute times drastically reduced once these schools are finalized. Building schools closer to home will mean that parents and students will not have to spend long times on the bus or in the car to get to school. And secondly, by building all of these schools, we will create much needed spaces and significantly reduce class sizes. Smaller class sizes, of course, mean more students can enjoy one-on-one time with their teachers and enrich their learning. In closing, I just want to leave you with this important message. Your government has heard your concerns loud and clear and is taking action to get the job done. And Edmonton, if you're listening in as well, don't feel left out. Next week, we will be announcing projects for Edmonton area as well. It's now my pleasure to invite Hélène Emmell to the podium to provide a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bonjour à tous. Hello, everyone. My name is Hélène Emmell, and I am the chair of the Board of Trustees of FrancoSud. It is my pleasure to welcome all of our special guests and all of you here today. First, I'd like to say welcome to the Honorable Danielle Smith, our Premier of Alberta, and the Honorable Demetrios Nicolaides, our Minister of Education, Board Chair Patricia Bolger, and here with her trustees from the Calgary Board of Education, our fellow chairs and trustees from Calgary Catholic and Rocky View. Welcome. J'aimerais aussi souligner également la présence de mes collègues. Nous avons conseiller Arnaud Goa, conseiller Grégory Van Dees, conseiller Yannick Harrison, et aussi aux enseignants, la direction générale Madame Monique Baker de FrancoSud, et toute l'équipe de la Rose Sauvage qui nous accueille aujourd'hui dans cette école du nord-ouest de Calgary. This school that we are in today started offering Francophone program in 1996. It was then known as École Francophone at Queen's Park and offered an education from kindergarten to grade 6 to just 57 students. Fast forward to today, 30 years later, we have now a grade 7 to 12. It is a secondary school with over 400 students, as well as a team of 40 dedicated teachers and support staff. Beaucoup de choses ont changé au cours des 30 dernières années, mais nos priorités demeurent les mêmes. Accompagner nos élèves dans l'épanouissement de leur francophonie, développer leur plein potentiel et préparer à devenir les leaders de demain. Les éducateurs jouent un rôle essentiel dans le développement intellectuel, émotionnel et social des élèves en leur transmettant des connaissances et en les guidant dans leur apprentissage, en les inspirant à devenir des citoyens engagés et épanouis. Il est essentiel que nos élèves, mais également notre personnel, aient accès à des infrastructures qui sont à la hauteur de leur dévouement et aussi à l'équivalence réelle. On behalf of the FrancoSud Board of Trustees and our entire division, I would like to thank Minister Nicolaides and the Government of Alberta for today's announcement. I would also like to thank all of the members of our community, students, parents, school staff, administration, and our local MLAs actually, who have been such great advocates of the funding of this modernization project. Excuse me, as English has escaped me. While a lot of work remains to be done, today's announcement marks the first step towards the realization of this important project, which will allow us to better serve our community and provide our students with the world-class education experience they deserve. FrancoSud is ready, and we look forward to working with the Alberta government and get shovels in the ground as quickly as possible, not only here at École de la Rose Sauvage, but also at all our ongoing infrastructure projects that we have previously received planning and design funding, and that is construction of a K-6 school in Harvest Hills, construction of a K-9 Catholic school in the Hamptons, and construction of a public senior high school in Panorama Hills. Nous sommes très heureux de cette annonce et nous allons continuer à travailler en collaboration avec le gouvernement de l'Alberta afin que tous ces projets se concrétisent le plus rapidement possible. Ensuring that our province offers a dynamic francophone education system with modern infrastructure brings a rich diversity to our communities. It can be a major factor when it comes to a family's decision on where to live, where to buy a house, where to work, where to raise a family. We are grateful to the Government of Alberta's support for this publicly funded Francophone public and Francophone Catholic education and its commitment to building and modernizing schools across the province. Thank you, and I will now turn the mic over to Board Chair Patricia Bolger of the Calgary Board of Education.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Premier Smith and Minister Nicolaides and all my fellow trustees from Calgary Catholic, my own board, Calgary Public, Rocky View, and FrancoSud. Thank you very much for hosting us today. So on behalf of the Calgary Board of Education, thank you to Premier Smith and Minister Nicolaides. We are thrilled to receive design funding for an additional 10 new schools in some of Calgary's fastest growing communities. Schools are the hub of a community, drawing neighbors together and building relationships. When families have a school close to where they live, their kids can attend the same school as others in the neighborhood, and families find it easier to become involved in the life of their community. We are so grateful to the Government of Alberta for recognizing the urgent need for new learning spaces as the CBE and Calgary continues to experience record growth. Right now, CBE schools are full and many are overflowing. More than a third of our 250 schools are operating at 100% utilization or higher. Recognizing that it can take 2 to 4 years to build new schools, we hope to see the designs for these schools begin as soon as possible. Our goal is that through the School Construction Accelerator Program, these schools will quickly move from design to shovels in the ground. Together with the 2 schools announced last month, the CBE will receive 1 new high school, 5 new elementary schools, and 6 new middle schools in some of the fastest growing Calgary communities. It'll be a great day when we can welcome students and staff into each of these new schools. So thank you again for this significant announcement.
Thank you to our speakers. We'll now enter our media Q&A portion of the announcement. A reminder for reporters, please mention your name and your outlet, and we'll be taking one question, one follow-up. We'll start off with questions here in the room before we move over to the phones. Go ahead, first up the mic.
Right, thank you, James from the Western Standard. Congratulations on this announcement. Premier, we have a new Prime Minister, and there are a lot of people in this town in the oil and gas sector who are particularly worried about outcomes and the future of the oil and gas sector. So if Prime Minister Carney continues on with policies of Justin Trudeau, Stephen Guilbeault, or part of that, what are you prepared to do to push back if that happens?
Well, what I would say is that we know that this last 10 years of federal government has brought some of the most destructive policies to Alberta, whether it's been emissions caps or methane caps or net zero electricity grids or net zero cars or net zero buildings or C-69 or tanker bans. That is a record they can't run away from. I've seen nothing to indicate that they're going to change course on that. In fact, the new Prime Minister has written his book on values, and one of his values is to phase out the oil and gas industry. So what I have been asking for is an election right away. We need to make sure that whichever way this gets resolved, that we have somebody at the table for 4 years who can negotiate a renewed Canada-U.S. free trade agreement so that we can end this back and forth on tariff war, which is benefiting no one. So I would hope to see an election call very soon.
Okay, and any budget adjustments for MLA Sinclair up in Lesser Slave Lake, who's complained there's not enough money going back into his jurisdiction?
Well, I think MLA Sinclair didn't have full information. As you can see, what we do is we do blanket announcements for high-level budget, and then we do the granular announcements. In Lesser Slave Lake, there's $134 million of a total $239 million towards the road project that he identified in his post. That's Highway 88, which is absolutely a priority. There's 2 new schools that will be built in his riding, and there's also an upgraded to an EMS station. But we know that there's need all over the province, and so we've got to make sure that we balance that. I wish we could build every school that was needed everywhere all at once, and every road that was needed everywhere all at once. We can't. We have to stage it. We've got about $8 billion a year in our capital plan. We try to be very fair between Calgary and Edmonton, northern, central, and south. And in fact, in the transportation budget, the largest share of it is going to northern Alberta. We've got some big projects up there to make sure that we can start building a pathway to get between Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray, as well as a second road to be able to get out of Fort McMurray in the case of deadly fires. So I would say that everyone just needs to be patient as we roll things out, and we have every interest in making sure that we prioritize the needs that are put forward by our MLAs.
Next up the mic.
Lana Smith, Globe and Mail. Premier, I wanted to ask you about the RCMP investigation, and I hope you could just answer this with a simple yes or no. I'm wondering if any high-level officials, current or former, from your government, including yourself or from AHS, have been questioned by the RCMP?
No.
Not yet? Do you know if they are going to?
You asked for a yes or no. I gave you the no.
All right, thanks. Second question, switching to a different topic. On Monday, you told media that MH Care was still working with Health Canada since 2023 to put forward an application to bring in IV acetaminophen to Alberta. We've asked Health Canada this week and also numerous times over the past year whether or not they've received an application from Alberta government, from MH Care, or from Atabay. The answer every single time, including this week, was no. There has been no application put forward. So can you be more specific about how exactly this $49 million that's being held onto by MH Care of government money is going to be utilized to benefit Albertans? The
ask is for a high an acetaminophen that could be used as a replacement, high dosage acetaminophen that could be used as a replacement for opioids in hospital use. My understanding is they began the process in November of 2023. Health Canada came back and gave them a different process they wanted to follow, which submitted another application in November 2024. We've assembled the paperwork, and as I understand it, the health minister is working on getting that available to the media as soon as she can.
Thank you, Alana. We're going to move to our next question. I see you have a lot of your colleagues behind you, and we have the phone lines full.
Once the paperwork is out, you'll see the difference. There's always two sides to a story. Maybe you're not getting full information. So,
thank you, Alana. Let's go to our next question at the mic.
As I did mention, yes, the health minister is assembling that information. I gave you what I have been briefed on, and we'd be happy to get that information out to you. I'm not sure of the timing on that, but yes, we intend to make sure everyone has full information.
Next at the mic, and then we'll take a couple from the phones.
Aaron Collins from CBC National News. Thanks for taking my question, Premier. I want to turn back to the announcement of the federal cabinet. Mark Carney has pushed Stephen Guilbeault out of the environment file, said he's going to get rid of the consumer carbon tax, but he still doesn't have any ministers, or only two ministers west of Ontario. I'm just curious what your sense is on what this says about his attempts to sort of reach out to Western Canada to make bridges to voters here and to this region.
Well, look, we had a problem in Parks Canada with them not clearing away forested areas, which has resulted in a wreck in Waterton, a wreck in Jasper, and we hope we don't have a wreck in Banff. So it's certainly not going to be, it's going to be soft comfort for everyone to see that Monsieur Guilbeault still maintains a position in Parks Canada. We've got a lot of work to do. We're about to enter into fire season, and I would hope that we would be able to move very quickly on securing those towns so that they don't face a fire threat. So that would be one thing I'd say. I think that the Prime Minister has made his views very clear about keeping oil and gas in the ground. He's made his views very clear about he not wanting a transparent carbon tax. He wants a hidden one. So I don't think it does Alberta any good if we end up seeing massive increases to industrial carbon taxes. It's been quoted many times saying he thinks that the carbon tax is too low. So I'm going to just reserve judgment. I had a whole range of things that are problematic with the federal government, from emissions caps to tanker bans off the West Coast, the inability to approve pipelines, getting approvals and then having them pulled, having a convoluted regulatory process that makes it impossible to get new pipelines built, continued threats of regulating our power grid, continued threats of regulating our industry, continued threats of export taxes, cutting off energy. I haven't really seen any change that would lead me to be encouraged that we're going to have a reset on our relationship. So we need an election, and that's how it needs to get sorted out.
Switching topics a little bit, I understand your government sort of actively recruited Ms. Mentzilopoulos to be the CEO of AHS. Your statement of defense from both AHS and Alberta Health alleges that she was incompetent and failed to fulfill her responsibilities. So just trying to square the circle on that. I mean, if that's the case, why did you push so hard for her to be in that position in the first place? And is that a recruitment failure?
We have a refocusing plan. You know, we had hoped, having worked with the individual for as long as we did, she was in a position where she knew what our refocusing was, and you can read her own statement of claim that about her resistance to having several of the functions moved to Alberta Health. That was very transparent from the time I wrote my mandate letter to the time that we announced the refocusing in November to when the individual was first hired. It was very transparent what we were doing, and you can just read her statement of claim to show where she says in her own words the many, many ways in which she felt that was diminishing her role. But we were transparent from the start. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to be able to move forward with that. But we now have new leadership, and we're going to. We know that we need to have a separation of the purchaser and provider. You cannot have a provider of health services making decisions about their competitors. I mean, we've got a couple of charter schools here today. You wouldn't have one of the public boards telling them whether or not they'd be allowed to build a school. That's our job as the province. It's part of the reason why we have a separation. We have a public board, a Catholic board, and charter boards. It's the same thing that we have in healthcare. We have a public board, we have Covenant, and we have charter surgical centers. They all need to be able to report directly to the province, and one shouldn't be trying to stop the other one from operating. That's what we were observing. That was the problem that we were trying to solve, and we're going to continue going forward with that refocusing.
Thank you. We're going to take a couple questions from the phones before we come back to the room. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
The first question comes from Mr. Mr. Rick Bell of Post Media. Your line is already open.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Premier. My questions are about the events in Ottawa today. And the first one is, and it was asked before, but I'm going to ask it in a somewhat different way. There's not a whole lot of representation in the inner circle of Mark Carney west of Thunder Bay. In fact, it's the same representation New Brunswick has. But Carney, in trying to answer the question, said, well, but I'm from the west. There's no problem. I'm from the west, implying that he will look after the west and in more particularly Alberta's. He'll have Alberta's back. Are you convinced that is the case, that because he was, grew up as a youth in Edmonton, that is enough to qualify as somebody standing up for Alberta?
I think what we've observed is that anyone who's elected under the banner of this party follows the party line. It doesn't matter where they're from. And so we have seen successive individuals who've gone to Ottawa who have supported policies that have been terribly damaging for our industry. So I think that's why we need to have an election, is that we need to decide once and for all whether we're going to be supportive of each region, supportive of our principal industry, supportive of our principal export product, or whether we're going to continue on with the same destructive policies that we've seen for the last 10 years. So as I said, I don't think I've seen any indication that there's a change of heart or a change of course, and that's why we need to get to an election as soon as possible so we can sort that out.
And my second question, which is also about the new Prime Minister, is I know you've stood unequivocally against an export tax or curtailing oil. In fact, you want to produce more oil and gas, not less. Do you think that if Carney says he's going to be a different kind of liberal, do you think if these liberals get in, you're going to face the same sort, or Alberta will face the same sort of potential threat to the industry?
I would hope that the events of this week have made people realize how seriously the Americans take energy security. The president has signed an executive order declaring an energy emergency. So when it was threatened that electricity would be cut off, we saw an immediate increase of a tariff threat to 50% on steel and aluminum, and only after the Premier backed down did those tariffs come in at 25%. I hope that is indicative to everyone. If that is how the reaction is going to be to $1 million worth of product going across the border, imagine what the reaction would be if for $350 million worth of product going across the border. Ontario only sells about $400 million a year in electricity. Alberta sells about $150 billion a year of oil and gas. So I would hope that if they haven't learned the lesson of the last week about how closely the Americans tie energy security to national security, I have every intention to make that perfectly clear in every meeting, in every forum. We will not support an export tax. We will not support any kind of curtailment on energy to the United States. We have other ways that we can take a measured and proportionate response, and that isn't it.
Thank you, Rick. And operator, could you put through our next caller, and then we'll come back to the room for a question after that.
Your next question comes from Kian Dex of Juno News. Your line is already open.
Hi, Premier. Kian Bexley with Juno News here. Congratulations on the announcement today.
Thanks.
I have a question about Alberta's post-secondary students. This week, news broke that the Radical Student Union from UBC Okanagan banned the operation of the Conservative Campus Club simply because they were conservative. This is not the first example of Canadian student unions oppressing the freedoms of young adults on university campuses, while also forcing them into student debt to pay for student union taxes. So I'm wondering what you make of their action, and do you think student unions should be left alone to make anti-democratic decisions like this?
Well, I can tell you that's not the culture that we want in Alberta. I could probably get Demetrios Nicolaides to respond to this, since as advanced education minister, he gave a directive that the Chicago principals need to apply on campus. We need to have robust a comprehensive debate that can happen on campuses, free speech, where people are allowed to explore their ideas and be able to debate them freely. So we began with that as a directive, and then began with a report card so that there can be active monitoring of the extent to which schools are living up to that commitment. I've been pretty happy with what I've seen in Alberta, but obviously if there are isolated incidents that come up, I would put that to my Minister of Advanced Education, Rajan Sawhney, to look into.
Just a follow-up, I noticed your MINS panel, the expert panel looking into advanced education in this province. It has a long list of things that they're looking to report back on to improve advanced education in Alberta. A huge component of that is student union reform, but it doesn't appear that student union reform is part of their mandate. Am I misreading something, or is it not included?
Well, you know what? I'll take that away as sort of a point for them to look into. What we're looking at is whether there are an application of policies that are interfering with academic freedom, whether there is a better way to be able to fund research so that we can make sure that we get the full spectrum of views that are funded through our research, and to make sure that we're being fair in how we fund between different academic institutes for different types of programs. But I hadn't seen that in this province student unions were a problem, but I can raise it with Minister Sawhney to see if she needs to add that to the mandate.
Thank you. We're going to come back to the mic in the room here, and we'll see if we get an on-topic question. Go ahead, Adam.
First, I have one on topic. I promise I do. Adam McVicker with Global News. Hi, Premier. On the federal cabinet, what is the directive you're giving your government? How are you guys going to maneuver this with, of course, calls for a federal election, but of course you guys have to work together with the federal cabinet given the tariff situation. So what does that maneuvering look like moving forward here?
Well, I don't really know. I mean, as you saw, we did do a joint announcement on homelessness funding for Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, and Lethbridge. We'd been working on that for some time, so I was pleased to see that go ahead. And there are other types of policies that we're just going to wait until the new government is established to be able to continue discussions on. Some of the joint programs that we have don't have an immediate timeline on them, so I think that there's an opportunity for us to wait until the election is over. I have yet to see how the new Prime Minister is going to manage his First Ministers meetings. We had been having, and we do have Council of the Federation meetings, which are just the premiers. We have been meeting weekly, and we've been adding in First Ministers meetings at the request of the Prime Minister. But now that that's changed, I'm not sure what that flow is going to be, but I'll certainly participate in those. The most important thing we can do right now is maintain some stability in our relationship with the United States, hopefully not see any escalation, and try to deal with any disputes in the meantime. But the only way we're really going to get to a resolution with our largest trading partner is a full renegotiation of the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. Those agreements can take up to 2 years to renegotiate. That's why we need an election. We need somebody at the table who has a 4-year mandate to be able to do that.
And on today's announcement, what is the plan to ensure the school boards who are getting these new schools have the resources available to recruit and hire on teachers to fill them?
Yeah, thank you. An important question. Certainly, adding additional space through the construction of schools is an important objective, but we need to make sure that we have adequate staff to fill these new schools. In fact, 2 days ago, I announced that as part of Budget 25, the government of Alberta will be investing $1.1 billion in new funding over the course of the next 3 years. And that is to directly support the hiring of 4,000 additional teachers, educational assistants, and other staff. Because, of course, we need to build these schools, but we also need to adequately staff them. So we are also making significant improvements and investing additionally to the operating side of the equation to ensure that our school boards have the resources to hire more staff.
Hi, Premier. Tim Brooks, CTV. What has your personal experience been like with Athena Mentzelopoulos?
I'll just let the court process play out, and we'll see how it ends up resolving itself. I think you've seen the government statement of defense, and I think there's two sides to every story, and I encourage everyone to go and have a look at that.
So there is two sides to every story, but you're not personally involved in this lawsuit, so you can speak to this. I mean, you've dealt with Athena multiple times. We've seen you in public with her for events like this. So can you just talk us through, your experience dealing with her? Was she incompetent like these lawsuits say?
No, I can't, actually. I'll just wait and see the court process play out.
Thanks, Tim. We'll go to our next at the mic here. Thank you. And then we're going to go back to the phones.
Jillian Cood with City News. Just regarding the federal cabinet minimal Western representation, no one from Alberta. With that, are you concerned the voices of prairie farmers won't be heard, especially canola farmers, as they face tariffs from two of the biggest trading partners?
I think there's lots of ways that the premiers are going to be able to fill that information gap. I can tell you the issue of canola was very prominently on our agenda when we met at the Council of the Federation. And I think this is what the premiers have all seen, is that while there's this disruption at the federal level and while we're waiting for a new government to be chosen that has a 4-year mandate, we've all had to step up and be a lot more active in being able to build partnerships, make our case. I'll continue doing that. On the issue of canola, I've been told by my agriculture minister that the product we sell mostly to China is seed, and so much of that is going to be not disrupted. We also have the benefit that a renewable diesel project from Imperial Oil is about to be in operation in the next couple of months. They're going to need 2.5 million tons a year in canola, which is about the amount that we send to China. So this is, I think, one of the things that is happening through all of these different disputes is we're looking at ways that we can help each other, looking at ways we can find new markets, and we're going to continue doing that.
And yesterday, Premier Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, a bit frustrated with the feds, he said something along the lines of we need a Team Canada approach, not a Team Quebec approach in terms of how the tariffs are being responded to. In your eyes, are we seeing a bit of maybe a divide between Western and Eastern Canada, or are we happy with a fulsome Team Canada approach?
That's not the quote I saw from Premier Moe. I think Premier Moe said that perhaps the new Prime Minister should make a priority of going to China or to the United States as opposed to going to Europe, because our two biggest challenges that we have right now are the tariff war that we're in with the United States and with China. So I think that it's a question of priorities. I share his concern about that. But we always have a very collaborative table with the Council of the Federation, and we always try to find areas where we can agree. I've been pretty public that I oppose the idea of an imposition and using energy as a weapon. I think everybody learned the lesson this week about what I was trying to warn of. But there has been what I think is a proportionate response to what we're seeing from the Americans, acknowledging we're 1/10 the size of their economy, so there is less that we can do. No one wins a trade war. No one wins a tariff war. When we put import tariffs on goods, it just hurts Canadian consumers and Canadian businesses. But sometimes these tactics are used to be able to create some pressure so we can get to a solution. The sooner we can renegotiate CUSMA, the better for everyone.
Thank you. And we have time for one, maybe two more questions. We're just going to take one more from the phones. If, operator, you could put through the next caller, please, and then we'll come back to the room if we have time.
Your next question comes from Chris Verco of Calgary Herald. Your line is already open.
Hi, this is a question for the Premier. Premier, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on Jonathan Wilkinson being reappointed the Natural Resources Minister and Terry Duguid being appointed the Environmental Minister?
Well, let me start with Terry Duguid. He had come out here to assist in helping to make sure that the housing could be built in Jasper. So I'm grateful for that, because we had put forward a proposal that was rejected, and I'm glad they were able to find an alternative proposal. So I'll look forward to seeing if he is prepared to repeal any of the offensive laws that we've been fighting for the last number of years. As for Jonathan Wilkinson, when I was down at Sierra Week, I had an American official say to me, how can a Canadian energy minister be opposed to pipelines? And I said, that's a great question. So I would say that I would like to see a recalibration on the part of everyone. When you have the Energy Minister of Canada openly musing that we don't need to build pipelines, at the same time as I'm in the United States trying to get pipelines built and talking to my counterparts east, west, and north, trying to get our product to market, is counterproductive. So that's why I said I haven't really seen much of a recalibration. They can shuffle the deck, but it's still the same foundational ideology that has been punishing to our province for the last 10 years. So we need an election to sort it out, and I hope that gets called sooner rather than later.
Just as a follow-up question, the Prime Minister today said he wants to make Canada a superpower both in conventional and clean energy. What is your reaction to those comments, and how would you suggest he do it?
Well, what I would like to see is economic corridors built so that we can get a few more pipelines built to the West Coast for both natural gas as well as for our heavy oil and conventional oil. I'd like to see a similar type of approach so that we can get an economic corridor built to Grays Bay so that we can also unlock critical minerals potential. I'd like to see if we could get a corridor built to Churchill so that we can do some platforms there so we can do export. And I'd like to see a restart of an Energy East concept that may use a different route. I understand Montreal is a little difficult to contemplate, but maybe there's a different route that we could use. And I'm delighted to see that Nova Scotia has taken the ban off fracking. Those are the kind of things that you say that you see if you really want to see a change of direction. I'd also like to see at G7, which will be in Kananaskis, I'd like to see all of the G7 leaders sign on to a commitment to pursue natural gas as a way of not only providing energy to the world, but also reducing emissions. When you use natural gas, you're not using coal and dung and wood and other higher emitting products. And so that will help us to address issues of energy poverty around the world. So that's what I'd like to see happen. We have already demonstrated our willingness to partner on new energy solutions. We, through Emissions Reduction Alberta, Alberta Innovates, Alberta Enterprise Corporation, and various other entities, we helped to start, gave some seed funding to Ever, which is now doing at-scale geothermal development and are helping us with our drilling accelerator. We have funded small modular nuclear research and partnered with Saskatchewan on an MOU to try to roll that out. We'll be having a nuclear consultation happening in Alberta throughout the coming months. We have also developed a hydrogen hub and starting to build out hydrogen not only for transportation fuels but for home heating and electricity. We are developing ammonia as an alternative as well to do dual combustion with coal to reduce emissions profiles. We have carbon capture utilization and storage at scale, which has helped us to develop and attract businesses such as net zero hydrogen, net zero petrochemicals with Dow, as well as a final investment decision coming soon, I hope, for net zero cement with Heidelberg. So we have embraced both. The problem with the federal government is that they have only embraced one. And what we need to see is an all-hands-on-deck approach to energy, and unfortunately, I just haven't seen any concrete action that leads me to believe that there's been a change of heart on the part of this current government. So I think we need to have an election to get that fully vetted.
Thank you. And we have time for one last quick question. We'll come back to the mic in the room here. Go ahead.
Matt Skates, Canadian Press. We do have confirmation that the federal government is getting rid of the consumer carbon price. What is your reaction to that news?
Well, I'd like to hear what the plans are for industrial carbon pricing, because every time I have heard the new Prime Minister speak, he has said that he doesn't think prices are high enough, and he has always, and even as recently as this leadership race, he talked about getting rid of the transparent tax, which is the carbon tax, and increasing the hidden tax, which is the industrial pricing. Now, we in Alberta have had industrial carbon pricing since 2007, so it's unclear to me if he intends to layer on top of what we were already doing or what that price is going to look like. But that's why we need an election, is to get some clarity on just how badly he's going to punish the oil and gas sector and what that new industrial pricing scheme he talked about during the leadership is going to look like.
Okay. Switching gears here on AHS, both the health ministers and AHS statements of defense say Athena was fired for her poor job performance and not because she was investigating procurement contracts. But what does that say that the RCMP is investigating this? Is the issue of Athena's firing separate from potentially improper contracts, or are those entirely two separate things?
I think you'd have to ask them. As I said, I haven't been in contact with them. All I can tell you is that we had very clear objectives about what we wanted to do with the healthcare system, that we wanted to have a separate system, a separate entity that would oversee mental health and addiction, a separate entity that would oversee primary care, and then a separate entity that would oversee assisted living and acute care. We said from the very beginning we were splitting the purchaser and the provider. The procurement function It was known by everyone as far back as November of 2023 that we were bringing that function under the acute care organization. So no one should be surprised. But what we were surprised by is the amount of resistance that we kept on facing from senior management about moving in that direction. We, as a government, do have the right to be able to make those policy decisions. You may have noticed in Britain, they've made the same decision to get rid of their centralized national health services. They're going to be moving very much in the direction that we are, with a lot more democratic oversight, a lot more site-based management, and anyone who resists the very clear direction that we're going to give them are going to face problems. That's just how we have an objective to increase the amount of care that we're giving to individuals. We have decided, especially looking at the success that we've had in healthcare, that having multiple different service providers gives choice and gives the options to those who are using those services. So that's what we're doing in healthcare. And that was foundationally at the heart of why it is we had to move with different leadership.
Thank you. That'll conclude today's announcement. Thank you to our speakers and for everyone for joining us.